right now at 3:31. Adam is a assistant professor at SLIC, Salt Lake Community College, and today he'll be speaking on OER in a, what's the DOL again? Department of Labor Competency Model. We have until 3:55.
Okay. All right, so my name is Adam. I'm the head of the Geoscience Department at Salt Lake Community College, and I'm part of something you've heard a couple times around here about Department of Labor grant, this $2 billion monster thing. The goal of that grant is really to train people in the high-tech industries, healthcare, information security, digital map, what we call geospatial technology. There's a whole bunch of different ways that's being played out. And Salt Lake Community College was part of a $20 million portion of that $2 billion. And that was a national consortium. Our goal of the grant was to develop mapping technology, satellite imagery courses, mapping courses, GPS courses, various things like that, to get people trained into these high-tech fields. So now what's funny about this whole deal is that I was supposed to present with someone else, Phil Davis. He couldn't come today. He didn't even tell me he signed me up as a co-presenter. And so when I found out, because I'm also part of the Kaleidoscope project, I was registering for Kaleidoscope, and I see I'm presenting, and then he said he could make it. So now I'm on my own, so I hate him now.
And David Wiley.
I know. So anyway, when I look at the name of the presentation, it's not very sexy. It's just long thing. I don't even know what it's about. And so I'm going to kind of give you the short spiel of this whole thing, and then it's kind of move into another direction that I think would be kind of interesting, just with us being the last session of day 2, so we're kind of like mush now. So just kind of roll with it, and then we just kind of have a nice conversation about this stuff. I should just say here that the partner schools is Salt Lake Community. Del Mar is in Corpus Christi, Texas. That's where Phil is hanging out. He's actually at a Canvas conference in San Antonio because he's been trying to get Canvas in Texas more. So this is all part of the Department of Labor. The quick part in this thing here is the Department of Labor made a competency model. There's a whole bunch of them, national standards to hit industry needs. Rather than having academics always come up with what should be taught, this was these DOL, Department of Labor competency models. Geospatial technology is one of them, and it's really to address the needs of what the businesses need, because the ultimate goal with this grant is actually get people back and get jobs. The whole grant that Department of Labor made, this $2 billion thing, happened right when we went into the Great Recession. So the whole idea was we had all these people losing their jobs. How do we get them back into the workforce, but with high-tech stuff rather than like manufacturing, which is kind of starting to fade away. And so this is just a graph showing, what competencies should be known. And as you move on up, really, a lot of this stuff should have happened when students are coming through, like in high school. And what we find oftentimes at community colleges is that our students are lacking in many of these areas. Creative thinking, for example, because that's all pixelated, but creative thinking, teamwork, problem solving, those things, or even lower, our students having to read and write and math and geography and science. We can try to teach this stuff, but ultimately with the competency model, I'm this yellow section. So I'm trying to create courses that meet this while I'm trying to hit these deficiencies that happen here. So, does anyone know what geospatial technology is? Most probably don't, okay? So what? Okay, if you played with Google Earth, you've done it. You've played with it, okay? Geospatial technology is one of the fastest growing fields you're going into. Oftentimes it's linked with like nanotechnology, biotechnology. It's the whole idea of satellite imagery, aerial photography, laser scanning, digital or interactive mapping technology, all that stuff you can play with on the internet. That's this whole area of geospatial. And the Department of Labor ranks it one of the top 3 growing fields in the nation. There's probably not a field you go into where you couldn't apply this very interdisciplinary technology. And so, not to bore you with that, for time's sake, just know that's basically what it is. It's mapping, it's satellites, it's all this high-tech stuff. One thing that I always find interesting though is this is the tool that we use in geography. Now, most students when they go through high school don't even learn about any of this stuff. They come to my classes thinking geography is all about memorizing capitals and rivers and coloring maps. You're not realizing that it's actually one of the most high-tech fields you can go into. You don't think of geography and that. Okay? But teaching geography without teaching this would be like teaching chemistry without the periodic table. How can you do it? Okay? So, in terms of the courses that we had to make for this grant, we had to follow OER, right? It's a federal grant under the Obama administration. Basically, most, if not all, new federal grants have to have the resources that are created in licenses Creative Commons. And ours is that 3.0 license, and I went to the 4.0 thing that sounds really interesting. So, I think for that slide, we all kind of get that concept. It has to be open and Creative Commons. We also followed the Universal Design Guide, and basically the idea of this whole thing is you go look at this stuff. It's got to provide multiple means of representation, text, visual, videos, just many ways of hitting all those different intelligences, the way people learn. Provide multiple means of action and expression, and then engagement. So the whole goal was trying to provide these courses that we were going to make following universal design. So if you ever need to Google that, there's a really good website out there. Probably the first hit, the first tag, when you go onto Google, you can learn that. The courses we made was a variety of things. How, the core kind of stuff. So we have a lot of schools now around the country who are now taking our curriculum and trying to take this package deal, put it into their own. So they want to start a GIS program that can take our stuff, Creative Commons, and just put it into their own system. Tweak it as much as they want, whatever. So we provide a whole bunch of core kind of stuff, just the basics, how to make cartography, map design, how to acquire data, remote sensing like satellite imagery. And then at Solid Community, we made more advanced stuff like programming courses, how to use your mobile phone for mapping technology. That's the locations for iOS. Open source, we hear a lot about open sources in this conference. Well, there's a movement in my discipline also for open source GIS. We're going to offer a course, and I've even considered a MOOC possibility of an open source GIS course. So, since most of you don't know, what geospatial is, I'm not sure if this is as interesting. Where we have to put this stuff, though, is something called Enter, NTER. So it's a site hosted by the Department of Energy. If you were to just write Enter, NTER, do a Google search for it, there's a whole bunch of, most of these Department of Labor grants are requiring people to put the material, this open material in Enter. So if you go there and you do a search, you could look for a whole bunch of open courseware that's already been created by other schools nationally for quite a long time now. So there's that. That's where we're putting the curriculum. We're also using virtual lab technology because it is mapping technology, and we're trying to use this stuff also in online. We use this technology where the software is already embedded, so rather than having students have to install the software onto their computers, they can just log into this site, and it's kind of like what we call a sandbox. It's like a virtual lab, computer lab. The students can sign in and say, we have 20 virtual computers, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to use that computer from 2 to 4. And then no one else can use it from 2 to 4. So it's a really cool shift that's kind of going in. Rather than having computer labs, which can cost a lot, maybe you can just have us all on a server and it's all virtually done. So that's one of the things we've been doing to address the IT component of all that stuff. Now, I can talk about the stuff I want to talk about. Now I can check out my DOL box. Okay, I presented for the DOL. One thing, this has changed a lot of the ways I have actually thought about my pedagogy. And I've really gotten bought into the open education movement, like philosophically right down to the core. That this idea that it's just, I was just talking to someone today at lunchtime. This is like, to me, like the Renaissance 2.0, right? You take my iPhone and get that to Da Vinci and stand back. could you imagine that? I mean, so this to me this is the whole new movement. So I started making this website where I was taking all this curriculum that I was building for the DOL and taking everything else. I started thinking like, you know, geography in itself is the world we live in, the physical and the cultural world. And how do we make this real? How do I get it so it's no longer about coloring a map of Africa, because we have to memorize capitals and mountain ranges of Africa, and really go, no, this is the world we live in. And if you actually understand the world, how does that change your sense of place and your sense of ownership to the world we live in? So I made this website. You're welcome to check it out. The whole thing is Creative Commons. You can take as much of this as you want. Okay? And so it's just www.opengeography.org. Okay? And I'll have all sorts of stuff in here. The idea for me with this is to get out of this text box, which to me is one of the most limiting things we've got in terms of academic freedom, and go to the open, which is like the ultimate academic freedom I've ever had in my life. Okay? So I have all this stuff that I'm putting here about geography, and then I've been creating this social media stuff so I can also keep saying, follow me on these things. Let's chat on Hangout, Google Hangout. Okay? People I don't even know, but let's have a live chat about what's going on, or you know, the Facebook, the Twitter, all these other things. Here's how this stuff is playing out live. So we hear a lot about, you know, how we're trying to, like, you know, make these books and stuff, but how much of, I'm moving to this idea of, like, how much of my life can be part of the open movement, okay? Right down to, like, I'm into, like, photography now, okay, on my phone, iPhoneography it's called, you know, and I've got a whole folder called Darkroom, you know, on my phone, and I post this stuff out onto Flickr, Instagram, all that stuff, and I say, this is free, this is life, this is my life, this is geography in action, here's all this cool stuff, take it as you want, but here's your world, and I'd love to hear you about your world, okay? And so, when I go to this thing, you know, I can go to eText Books. I've been going to a lot of the, I've been going to a lot of these things about how we make these e-text books, and I'm on the Kaleidoscope project, so I'm interested to see how they want us to create a finished product. You know, is this a PDF we want students to have? Is this a EPUB, something they could get from a Kindle app? But to me, once you hit that publish and it's now a PDF, that's a dead document. And then we'll update it again in a year or two. And it's not very dynamic. And so I went to this thing, and it's using the Weebly platform, which is a great platform if you're looking at website design, portfolio use for education, any of that stuff, just weebly.com. And so it's mobile friendly, so my students can go to the web and view this easily on an iPhone, Android, tablet, any of that kind of stuff. And so, for example, here, if I were to click on, say, human geography, okay, I've been creating these chapters here for my students, and we go in here to, like, one of them. Here's one on social and economic development, okay? Issues of poverty, gender equality, development issues. And so, okay, it's just your standard book, right? But what I like about this is that I can link out to sites, so I can link directly to the United Nations, because I'm pretty good at geography. It's like my life, but I'm not the expert of everything, okay? The world is. And so that's my vision of this thing, is that let the world be my textbook, okay? So if I'm going to talk about Human Development Index, okay, here's my little stuff on it that you get in an ebook, on a PDF document, but I'm going to take you into those sites, just like you would on a website, okay? And they can learn more about the stuff. But let's go a little further with that. You know, here's all this stuff. All the images I've got here are Creative Commons material. Images, you know, it's all that kind of stuff. And this is stuff I've been writing late into the night. But then we start adding this multimedia, right? The universal design stuff, okay? And the problem I have with, like, pushing stuff to an EPUB or a PDF or a Kindle, I'm going to use all those things, but I don't see a whole lot of the multimedia component. I mean, Apple's got that stuff with the iBook thing, but that's very limited to Apple, right? And so, but it has that nice multimedia component. So that's why I went to this weekly thing, because it allows people to, it's open even to the point of, it doesn't matter which software you use, right? You don't have to have Kindle, you don't have to have an Apple to do this stuff, to see the world. And so I use a ton of TED Talks, okay? So like here's one, Cheryl Woodin, I always say her name wrong, but she's a big advocate for gender equality. And she talks a lot about in her book called Half the Sky, okay? And it's all about the gender side of women around the planet and how so many women are not accounted for, just have disappeared. The ultimate genocide of all time has been of women who just disappear off the planet. And so she has a 20-minute video about that. And then we come on down more. And you know, here's some more stuff on the girl effect, on looking at gender issues. Because if you're going to deal with issues of poverty and economic development, you have to deal with poverty, you have to deal with hunger, you have to deal with giving women rights. You have to deal with, I mean, they make 70% or harvest 70% of the world's food, but only own 2% of the world's land. Okay, when you go to the grocery store and buy all this food, how much of the food you're buying at Costco is made by someone living in poverty? Okay, and so here I am talking about poverty, and yet I started having these ethical issues of like, here I'm talking about poverty, and yet we use these extremely expensive textbooks that, again, that almost says that this higher ed, it's elitism, right? How can I talk about poverty and people living on less than $1 a day in an elitist environment where only this information can be contained if you can afford a $140 textbook along with tuition? So it became an ethical issue. So I've got all these videos here of this stuff, and then I can go in there. How easy is it for me to add current events? Okay, like Malayla, you know, who we've heard about, who got shot by the Taliban, and she still stood up and said, "Try again." Okay, so it's kind of interesting how the whole DOL thing of just making stuff for getting people jobs totally changed my whole philosophy of education. I mean, if I want to show like a DOL thing, okay, here's stuff, you know, I'm making on satellite imagery. Okay, how do we use satellite imagery? I'm going to talk about the sun and electromagnetic spectrum, and we got videos there. Again, I'm not the expert of everything, and even if I did know this stuff, what's wrong with just showing like a 5-minute video from NOVA instead, right? And so that's, you know, so there's the stuff we're doing for the grant. Okay, so we're putting it on the enter site, but personally, once I check that box off the grant and send it to enter, this story continues on with me on this site. Okay, and so that's kind of my story. And so I guess the whole goal to me is like, how do we become? How does this everything we do as educators become this open idea where we just give access as much as possible to everyone possible? I have 5 minutes left, so I'll leave it at that for Q&A. So does anyone want to just throw anything at me? Yes, sir.
I am also a big fan of Weebly. I love the visual design. And I might even consider using that to drop some OER for my students, except for I don't have the experience with the compatibility with assessment and things like that. I'm wondering what you have done.
On the assessment piece?
Yeah, for grading.
So we use a learning management system called Canvas. And so what I do within Canvas is, I can show you, but all the assessment side, I base the assessments based off my book, my ebook, if you want to say. Sometimes our Canvas is a little slow. But so if I were to go to an example, okay, let's say natural disasters course. I think this is projecting, it looks a little weird. But let's say, you know, Module 7 is the introduction to weather kind of stuff and the weather hazards related to that. I have these things in here where I have these assignments set up where they go and read, they check the book, and then they take a quiz from the book. But that's contained within Canvas, right? That's not, the assessment component's not out there open part. Some of the other things that we have in here, like, you know, here's a video here that I have in the ebook, but then I put it into, this looks weird because the way it's projecting stuff. But they watch this video on extreme weather, and then we have this conversation, this discussion forum within Canvas to have a dialogue. So I guess I'm working two worlds here. I'm working the, okay, you're signing up for this 3 credit hour class. How do I give you a college level course, assessments and discussions and everything that's going to appease the 4-year institutions? On the other end, there's this other component where I'm saying, outside of that world, you may not be able to afford the tuition, but here is still life. That's a nasty. So that's kind of how I've dealt with that. So yeah.
This course here, sorry, it's this is all online. The textbook is for face-to-face and online,
Yeah.
and for open
Right.
for anyone else to look at.
So I could use this in a flipped classroom very easily, where I could say, go read this, come and take the quiz before we have class, and then we can do some kind of hands-on activity in the classroom on weather or disasters or map reading or whatever. So yeah. So it fits, that's another thing that's nice of it, it fits so many models. Plus I've been really moving into like the idea like, okay, we have learning outcomes, but then what are the essential questions beyond these learning outcomes? What's the bigger stuff? And then we can have like, because at Solid Community College we have the e-portfolio idea. We have students do assignments and then reflection and things. So these essential questions, what is the bigger idea I'm trying to get with you guys, you know, as students? I can put those out there so they can start thinking about them. And then I can have either assessments on those essential questions or discussion forums or reflection ideas based off these larger pictures that are even larger than the learning outcomes of that one chapter. If that makes sense.
This TA grant requirement about openness,
Yes.
do the Department of Labor have a centralized repository, or it's sort of decentralized?
It's the centralized that enter site. So I just typed in enter, boom, I'm there. The central repository of all this stuff for DOL right now has been this enter site. So if you were to go and then you can just do searches within this system. It's not the greatest system. It's a little better than Obamacare's, but
The new standard.
because it is on, but it's not the best. But from the user side, it's not bad. You can go in there and see all the stuff that people are making with this $2 billion grant, and even before then. So.
I sort of a setup question here, but since I've talked to you before about this, but it sounds like from your experience that the federal government didn't actually understand the thing they were requiring. That is, they had this sort of open ed resource requirement, but they didn't understand that open ed didn't simply mean the creation out of whole cloth of new resources, but it also mean the implementation of existing open resources. You experienced some challenges there, right?
Yeah, there's been some debate kind of on there. Like, did the Department of Labor want a new original content? And for us who are kind of into this, kind of going, we've heard a lot about the remix.
Right.
Things about this remix and stuff. Let's not keep recreating the wheel. That was the point of this whole OER to begin with, is let's advance forward rather than just keep recreating the same stuff and see who's got the sexiest and best free theme. Right? And so, so there has been debate about that. And honestly, I'm kind of not worrying about it anymore because it's too limiting to put myself in that box. And so I don't even put myself in the box.
Adam, thank you so much. Let's thank Adam for his